this is a wasteland. They see the vast peacefulness as devoid of life. And yet, there is life, and that life is precious. It is the life of the Dene, and that life is threatened.
Magical memories, the shining stars during the golden anniversary edition.
What has happened is that they have found out that we have coal under our land. The Navajo people that are caught on the wrong side of the fence, they're being told, you have to relocate, you have to move somewhere else because this is under the public law 93-531.
Under Public Law 93531, over 10,000 Dene people and over 100 Hopis have found themselves on the wrong side of the fence. The U.S. government is presently trying to remove them from this land they have lived on for thousands of years.
Personally, I don't want to leave because I was born and raised there, and my forefathers and my great-grandmothers, they're all buried there, and I believe that a lot of my people have lost their lives for that land. You know, in the 1800s, a lot of our people were massacred. This is my home, and it's just one place that I call home, and there's nowhere else in this world that is like that land.
Since 1974, when the law was passed, resistance has been growing. Responding to a letter from the elders at Big Mountain, the Veterans Peace Action Teams launched a convoy to bring food, supplies, and solidarity to over 300 families resisting removal.
Got it. You'll go up and you'll see that if you go straight, right on water, right on water, left on ocean. When you get up, as you get up to the freeway, it goes off to the right where you want to go. The sign says Watson. And I think it says 1 south. I'm not sure, but it says Watsonville. That's where we want to go.
They sent 150 veterans and supporters in 65 vehicles and delivered over 25 tons.
Is it?
They came from across the country. They came from 4 directions. The U.S. government's policy of relocation has a long history. Traditionally, the Hopi and the Dene, or Navajo as the Spanish named them, have lived in the Four Corners region where Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. In 1863, the Dene were rounded up by the Army and marched 400 miles across the desert to Fort Sumner in eastern New Mexico and imprisoned at the Bosque Redondo. After signing a treaty in 1868, they were allowed to return to their country but were restricted to this tiny area. The Dene ignored these boundaries and spread out. In 1882, President Chester Alan Arthur signed an executive order establishing a region for use by the Hopis and other Indians as the Secretary of the Interior saw fit to settle thereon. The lack of understanding or sensitivity to the individuality and separateness of these peoples is implicit in the wording of this order. Some Dene continued to live in the area specified by the 1882 executive order. In 1936, new boundaries were established for an area exclusively for the Hopis. In 1962, the area just outside the new Hopi reservation was declared by law a joint use area to be used by both the Hopis and the Dene. Then in 1974, Congress enacted Public Law 93531, which partitioned the JUA. One half became Hopi partition land, the other Navajo partition land. This left thousands of Dene and over 100 Hopis living on the wrong side of the line. Here, Hopi land is seen in red, the former JUA in blue. Long before 1974, many Dene communities were established in the JUA. Public Law 93531 suddenly declared these communities illegal. The government now insists that these long-established communities have to go. Today, Dene women are the central force of the resistance to relocation. Theirs is a matrilineal society. All inheritance is passed down through the mother's line.
It seems like the people from Washington, D.C., the state, and the tribe don't seem to understand. You need to stay on the land to understand and to really feel the people and feel the land and what they're entitled to. I believe if anyone should be born here and living all their life here should stay here. A lot of time, these people, they don't understand. They just tell them to, tear your hogan down, tear your house down because this is against the law that you live here. Well, what I see in these people is we don't go out into town and tell somebody, tell them to, hey, turn your bank account over to me. It belongs to me now. None of these people haven't done these things yet.
What happens when you're relocated? Do you know anyone who's been relocated?
I have seen some people get relocated. This one person called Nakachi. He relocated to Winslow, Arizona. And there, he didn't know the area because he is traditional Navajo. He knows very few words in English, but other than that, he speaks only the Navajo language, and his wife the same. And they got very ill physically, and then mentally they got a broken heart. They got very sick.
For some of the people in the other areas that have relocated, like whenever the law was first passed, a lot of those people we see in border towns like Flagstaff, where these people they have become homeless, because they lost their homes to mortgage or, other types of bills, and, now they're just homeless people.
And what the relocation people are doing to the people today is that they're forcing the people to get off the land, and they make all kinds of paperwork, like for they call it law, and they come around and they tell the people to leave and sign their name to these papers and put your thumb on these papers so you can have the money in the house, relocate yourself to other places. A lot of people don't believe in these because once when they leave their home, they will be just starving. A lot of them, they don't have their sheep, they don't have their cattle, they don't have their horses over there. And I guess they don't know the place. They don't know that this is just something new to them. And they're just dying off.
To the Dene, relocation has meant poverty, isolation, sickness, and despair. Many say relocation means death. It's not only the death of each individual they fear, but the death of the nation as a whole. In the corporate media, the government's relocation effort has been portrayed as a land dispute. By focusing its attention on an illusionary conflict between the Dene and Hopi peoples, they have diverted attention away from the real conflict, a conflict between tribal councils. Councils established by the U.S. government for the benefit of powerful multinational corporations leasing lands to exploit mineral resources. Public Law 93531 is in effect a large-scale eviction notice, pitting one tribe against another, an act whereby the state is in collusion with private industry, trading people for profits.
Where I'm living now, we have a so-called a Navajo and Hopi land dispute, which it's not a dispute among the traditional people. It's only a dispute between the government, the Hopi Tribal Council and the Navajo Tribal Council. They're disputing over natural resource. And all these programs are programmed under the government.
As opposition continues, Dene and Hopi activists have begun to speak out publicly. Both sides hope to tell the world that they are united in opposition to this injustice.
All right, we'll keep you on our rearview mirror.
Good.
Big crew ahead.
Yeah. He pulls off the freeway. You follow him, and everybody else go ahead.
Everything went all right, Mark?
Go ahead.
You're leading this convoy, is that correct?
I think so.
And we got a letter from the elders at Big Mountain. They had heard of the Veterans Peace Convoy to Nicaragua, and they requested, that a similar convoy be brought here to call attention, to their situation at Big Mountain.
The most interesting thing is that the spokespeople for the resistance are essentially not political. They're the cultural and religious and social. And for the most part, they're old people. They're not young people. They're not radicals. They're not, they simply want to keep their land.
The reason for this is, it ties in pretty much with the same thing in Nicaragua. It's people being exploited by our government and by the multinational corporations to make huge profits. So it ties in with what you could call war against the poor.
The Veterans Peace Convoy to Big Mountain was launched by Veterans Peace Action Teams, or VPAT as it's called by its supporters, mostly veterans of Vietnam, Korea, and World War II. As they had in El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, VPAT was bringing direct humanitarian aid and solidarity to the Dene Nation. Founded in 1986, after 4 veterans fasted on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., VPAT began protesting U.S. aggression in Central America and supporting Nicaragua's right to self-determination.
Veterans who are in VPAT, I think, are involved in the healing process, and we realize that somehow or other we can't even get back on path until we've made some kind of a reconciliation. And reconciliation is not rhetorical. It's not something you say. You do it with your whole life.
Among the protesters, Brian Wilson, who sat down on the tracks as the train approached. Only this time, the train failed to stop, and Wilson failed to get out of the way. Wilson was critically injured. One leg was severed. The other had to be amputated. Why it happened is
Though
not
best
yet
known
clear.
for the blockade
Navy
at the
officials
Concord Naval
witnesses
Weapons
say
Station,
the engineers
Brian
used
Wilson
the
has been
protesters
involved in actions against U.S. intervention in Central America for more than a decade.
We love you, Brian. You just hang in there, babe.
In 1988, he received the Sandino Award from then Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega for his efforts in the blockade. The train that ran over Brian was carrying weapons to be used by the Contras, who were attempting the violent overthrow of the Nicaraguan government.
The idea of veterans going to the new Vietnam and Central America as part of our own healing and our contribution to the larger society was an idea I had in 82, 83, 84, and 85. Now that led to the FAST, which was Veterans Fast for Life, which in turn, out of that came the Veterans Peace Action Teams. And so going to Big Mountain and dealing with the Hopi Navajo struggle is really the same struggle that the Salvadorans are experiencing and the Nicaraguans are experiencing and the Vietnamese are experiencing, dealing with being colonized from the West.
When we as Vietnam veterans went to Nicaragua and we saw what was happening there, we see the same thing happening at Big Mountain. It's still the same infringement. It's still exactly the same the way that it affects the people and the way that they're being moved and forced. It's no different than the relocations that we've done in El Salvador, in Vietnam.
Many of us, including myself, were relatively unaware of the fact that this type of policy of racism and exploitation and genocide on behalf of the energy cartels and whatnot was taking place right inside our own country. And we were, I think it was very appropriate that we were in Central America supporting both indigenous and non-indigenous people there. But then I think it was perhaps even more appropriate that we turned around and said, hey, this is going on right within the boundaries of the United States.
Veterans came from all over the country to make a statement that they were supporting the resistors that were not going to relocate for the convenience of the corporations. As veterans, we have a powerful statement to make, that when you have veterans going against the own United States policies to change things, and we've been to war and we've been lied to already, and when we go and we speak to young people or to other people, they listen.
There were people who came from all over the country. They came in all kinds of vehicles, pickup trucks, school buses, RVs, and flatbeds.
You guys are just one jump ahead of us and rent a car to do it.
We decided that part of the convoy's work would be to help in a tangible way to support the people on the land. And we felt that bringing food and other humanitarian aid was a way to help the people stay on the land long enough to continue their resistance. The other thing that we wanted to do with the convoy is to bring more public awareness to the issue.
Knowledge.
The kitchen is right here, there's bathrooms, there's also showers. We can stay in this area only here, okay? Cesar Chavez is coming in tonight and he's going to give us a statement.
There were young people with babies, there were children, there were elders. We had people from all walks of life.
Building here, in fact, it says convoy on it. Okay, that's got bathrooms and showers. And then, if you can see this building right here with the green roof, somebody's living in that. But right next to it, on the other side of it, is a small building with a green court.
The Veterans Peace Convoy to Big Mountain was certainly not an act of charity, but rather an act of solidarity. Along the convoy route, there were rallies which were held in different cities across the country. There were a number of human rights activists who came out and lent their support to the people of Big Mountain. Rigoberta Menchú, the Guatemalan human rights activist, spoke in D.C. North American Indian activists such as Chief Billy Tyak, Floyd Westerman, and also the president of NOW, Molly Yard, spoke. While we were in La Paz, the United Farm Workers headquarters hosted the convoy there, and Cesar Chavez came back from a speaking engagement he had in Detroit to speak to us.
And didn't keep its word. What we're concerned with is that the issue of Big Mountain is pretty much like the issue of the farm workers. It's the same thing. It's the same setting. It's the same strategy. And unfortunately, many times it's the same result. It's a tough fight, but it's not an impossible fight. And so we'd like to see you here because we're always glad to see people who we have something in common with that is a struggle. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Been involved with the longest walk back in '78. But one of the most important things that happened when we had our ceremony at Alcatraz, something Dennis Banks said, the physical and spiritual red power is that whites don't bleed white, blacks don't bleed black, yellows don't bleed yellow. And that is the physical and spiritual red power that's going to get you to Washington, D.C. I know one thing. The hardest thing of the longest walk wasn't the weather, wasn't our sore feet, wasn't the cold weather. It was our getting along with each other. That was coming. As long as you start off with that stage, as long as we start off with those pipes, as long as we start off, with good feelings. I know sometimes you're going to wake up kind of in different moods, but we learn to respect one another. This caravan, we're doing it for the love of the people, not the hate of the enemy.
Day and night they drove on, through deserts and over mountains. The convoy continued to grow, picking up cars and trucks in cities along the way. The journey was long and hard, but the people were excited and inspired.
To many people, it may have seemed that organizing this convoy was really smooth, but in reality, it took a lot of work. We actually accepted the project in September of '89 and didn't get to the land until June of 1990. In between that time, there was a lot of calls, a lot of letters, a lot of communication with people from all across the country. There's a lot of coordination that took place while people were actually on the road. We answered a lot of requests for radio interviews, and people were calling in from different parts of the United States. It took a tremendous amount of coordination and logistical planning to actually pull this thing off.
VPAT drew its support for the convoy from across the country, making it a national effort. From as far away as New Hampshire and Florida in the east to the Pacific Northwest, representatives from various organizations in places like New York, Boston, St. Louis, Kansas City, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, and Phoenix would converge on the Four Corners area of Arizona to assist the Dene and Hopi in their struggle. They would all arrive early in the morning.
Good morning. Fine, and you?
Pretty good.
Great.
So, what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Michael Job, and I'm from San Francisco.
Great. And so you're out here at Big Mountain, and what were you trying to accomplish?
Well, I'm associated with the Veterans Peace Action Teams, and basically what we're trying to do is draw consciousness to the people around the United States as to what the United States government is doing here in the United States and around the world, until we realize what we have done to the Native Americans from the time that we came onto this land as white people. We will never solve problems around the world. It starts right here, what we did with the Native Americans.
I'm Dunk Murphy from the Veterans Peace Action Team, living in Walnut Creek, California. We're here to truly do what soldiers are supposed to do, and that is to defend sacred land.
My name's Harry. I'm a Reserve, and I'm from Santa Cruz. I live up in Santa Cruz Mountains. And since I've come here, I think I see much more clearly how important this struggle is, because it's really a metaphor for the whole struggle over environmental degradation and the whole question of whether people are going to be allowed to live in a way that they choose that's different from the dominant society.
The huge quantity of food had to be inventoried, sorted, and repackaged for delivery. Though they came from diverse backgrounds from the far corners of the country, the convoyistas, as the group had begun to call themselves, worked together harmoniously.
Candy and nuts.
Nuts! We got nuts right here.
A case of styling mousse.
Well, listen, but that means we can have moose tonight instead of lamb. That's good.
What's this say? Excuse me. You can't read Hungarian?
So if I was just to turn you loose and you to go over there and start doing that too, you'd be approached pretty quick. So we're kind of running a pretty tight ship. So it's kind of good in that way.
In the midday summer heat, they took time out to find shelter from the relentless burning desert sun, to relax and get to know each other better.
We went up to the Hopi Ranch today, talked to some Hopi folks, played with the Hopi kids.
How was that?
It was really nice.
What did you play?
Well, they were kind of playing with the ball, and they were running around. They asked me if I was a reggae singer. I said, yeah. And they made me sing some, so I sang a song. And then they still wanted to play with my locks, you know. And then Emily, she went and got a tape out of her car. And she put a tape on in her tape machine and started playing some reggae music. And so we were up at this house, and this old medicine man was standing there talking, and these kids were running around, and reggae music was blasting out of the box. It was cool.
Later that evening, the group was welcomed by some of the traditional Dene elders of Big Mountain. They were among the first to resist relocation.
Alice Benelli told them when her parents brought her onto this land, she never imagined that when her hair turned gray, she would be forced to move away. In 1980, She and her 3 daughters were maced and thrown to the ground after confronting a work crew. The crew is attempting to erect a fence along the partition line on her land. She was charged with 8 federal crimes, but later acquitted. Quiche said, "It would be a good thing for both you and my people, for you to go out and observe the land and the conditions under which we live." He explained that he no longer trusted his tribal council. When he pleaded to his council for help, they put him in jail. He feels the spiritual laws he lives by are no longer those of the council, that their lives are now governed by materialism.
I'm glad you are here, all of you, to help our traditional elders here. Big Mountain is very famous because these are the people that they first put their life on the line when the first forced relocation begun. And there are quite a few affected areas. There's Komai Mesa, Red Lake, and Tisiato, and Mosquito Spring, Hao Mesa, and Big Mountain, Cactus Valley, then Tisto. That's where I'm from. Back in '74, when they started dividing the land, my father, he was a POW during World War II, and he tried to stop the fencing, and he was billy clubbed, and he was dragged to jail, stayed 30 days in there. And then later on, my mom and their whole gun and house were burned down, and we tried to get some information from Tuba City, and they didn't have it. The BIA said they lost all the evidence, everything. So please take care of yourself and know where you're going and talk and communicate, all of you among yourself.
The next day, at a rally in Flagstaff, a number of the Dene spoke about their mistreatment at the hands of the U.S. government. They said they have no representation, that their views have been ignored. Rallies like this one are one of the few ways left for them to bring their struggle to the world's attention.
We know there are minerals right within our land where we live at Big Mountain. The federal government is just using Indian people to harass us. It's always been the case where the federal government finds a way to conquer certain people and then use the people against one another. And that's been the method they've always used. Another thing that's been a hardship on us is housing. All our houses are in very poor shape. We have a very hard, cold winter. Sometimes it's very hard to keep yourself warm. The Bureau of Indian Affairs wouldn't even allow us to make renovations. If you do, somebody shows up from the BIA office and tells you, you're not supposed to live in this warm house. You have to undo it. And that's just too inhumane.
I've never seen the President of the United States. These are the person, the congressional people. They are the ones that put in all these laws. They think we're just tramps, animals. Never think about it. You know, that I feel down for God, even though this is the United States. I feel real bad. Sometimes we just cry. We don't even know what to do. This is really crazy. Because all we're thinking is that we're going to be threatened every day. And a lot of our people have gone to war, foreign war. As to be a mother like myself, I have boys. I'm afraid they're going to go into service. Some of them are talking about it. I said, you can't, because they don't care for us.
I really want to thank all of you, all my children who come from far away to be here with us. I'm not educated, and I don't know how to read and write. And I often wish sometimes that I could speak to you in the manner in which you understand, and that we could communicate. If I was very educated, I would have been a lawyer and take the government and beat them at their own game.
Someday that the land will be, well, it is ours. It's always been ours, and no one can take it away from us, and we're not going anywhere. We are staying there, and we have told the government over and over again, we feel like a broken record. I don't think they can hear at all. I don't know whether they're people or not. I'm beginning to think they're just a piece of rock sitting around over there.
Some people may look at it as a political thing that's going on. I realize that they're connected to Mother Earth. I realize that they're connected to the essence of holding traditions, holding a religion. Any Christian, Catholic, Jew wants to hold his religion, hold his traditions, and we all honor that in America. Why have we tried to destroy that in the Native American Indians? People of the Hopi and Navajo nations have decreed their own sovereignty for a long time, and they've been even recognized for that sovereignty. My connection as a Vietnam veteran is to the veterans that have served from the Navajo and the Hopi. They've been very dedicated as Americans, as in serving their country here and going off to war. And what they really were fighting for was the American ideals, those freedoms of life, liberty, and their pursuit of their happiness.
The next day, the convoy veterans went to Tisto and marched into the chapter house with the Dene veterans. They walked together to honor the fallen Dene warriors who had never returned home from the wars. For the Vietnam vets, it was the homecoming they had never received from their government.
By being able to talk to the Navajo veterans and saying that we're there in solidarity, here you have these veterans that went out to fight war for their country, yet when they return, their land is being taken away. And they're not being provided, with enough to support themselves, or land or housing or jobs to sustain their families. So it was a very, very touching experience to be able to be there and to be part of that.
This morning I got a telephone call at home from the Navajo Tribe's Navajo Hopi Development Office, trying to discourage your convoy coming here. You didn't come here to start trouble or anything. You came here to gather information and concern of the people, individually, the people that are actually living on the land. Not somebody that doesn't know us, not somebody that does not know the background of our people. They merely got their information from paperwork or what we tell them. You came here today to listen to the people themselves and look at their situation and take the information and disseminate it back to your state representatives and state leaders, and then the state leaders can in turn disseminate that to Congress, and you yourself can do the same thing with whatever means, media, television, newspaper, letter writing. So we welcome you wholeheartedly, that we trust you that you're going to do this for us.
The main reason why many people are resisting relocation and all forms of genocide is because, for religious reasons. The land is our religion, that is our identity, and that is why the resistance is strong.
A long time, I never did trust the white man. Out of real anger, hatred. I see something today. So, say thank you. You show me that. That there are good people outside of my people.
the next 5 days, the Veterans Peace Convoy delivered food and supplies to over 300 Dene families resisting relocation and Hopi supporters in the former joint use area. The terrain was rugged and dusty. The desert was hot and dry. In the process of the delivery, the convoyistas would continue to talk and listen to the people on the land. What they would find was a people struggling to survive in a harsh environment, resisting, strong, and living in harmony with Mother Earth. As they had heard from Alice Benally, Quiche, and the others, they were told of hardships and abuse. But also there was reaffirmation of the people's determination to remain in their ancestral homelands. The Veterans Peace Convoy delivered food to families in Jedito, Tisto, Coal Mine Mesa, Tisiato, Red Lake, Mosquito Springs, Sand Springs, Howell Mesa, Cactus Valley, Big Mountain, Hopi Land, and other communities.
I'm really glad to see a lot of these people by this time around here, and I am hoping that there's a lot of people that would still support us, like for the convoy, and I'm really happy that they're helping the people out here on the land with all kinds of things that these grandma would, get help from it, and some of these people never get help like this before, and I am really happy about it. Thank you.
Don't drop it. Yeah, get some more.
I think that the convoy was a real success in the sense that we were able to give the people a sense of hope for that moment at least. And also we were able to show the people that they're not alone in their resistance. One of the things that strikes me as a woman is the level of sacrifice and commitment that these women have, who are really the backbone of the resistance to relocation. When you see these women in their 70s and 80s who are willing to completely give their lives for this struggle, it's awe-inspiring. And it's really hard for me to turn my back on that.
We're standing right in the top of Big Mountain, and as you can see, this is coal. This is what Peabody Coal Company and the coal companies want, and this is the whole thing behind the relocation of the people here.
For the large corporations which are trying to take control of this area, the issue is coal, uranium, and other mineral resources. For the Dene and the Hopi, the issue is the survival of the people.
To bring this to the world's attention, to warn all the people, wherever I may be able to get to, that they must never make any more mineral resources into destructive uses of any kind. And this four corners area surrounded by Sacred Mountain must be left in the natural state. No one's supposed to come in and take this mineral resource or anything out yet, because their shrines represent a spiritual center, not the land boundary, but it's a spiritual center that extends to the edges of land in four directions where our people are settled. There's no fighting, quarreling out here between Hopi and Navajo. In fact, we're living together peacefully, and we have sacred commitment and covenant made a long time ago. They still have them, and so they're not going to do that. But the government, without listening to the native people, they just passed this law, public law 3531, and they know that is not what we want. That law is merely taking the power away from the original native people and then take over mineral resources. They're after this mineral resources. That's the reason why they're passing that without consent from the leaders who want to be traditional people.
I was born here, Cactus Valley. That's my country. Living here for a long time, I don't want to move out on other country. I can stay here. My old grandpa and my old grandma was living here since 4 summers. They gone living here and come back here, and I'm still living here for life.
This week, we move out on a convoy, a term we learned well at the Armed Services. Not a convoy of death and destruction, but a convoy of freedom, dignity, and love.
From across the country and around the world, support for the resistance to relocation continues to grow. For VPAT, the Veterans Peace Convoy was the beginning of an ongoing effort to help raise public awareness and build a broader base of support. The Veterans Peace Convoy to Big Mountain brought together a group of strangers, hardworking, dedicated, and committed, who became allies in action. The food and clothing they brought was a humble offering in the face of the incredible sacrifice that people make to save their ancestral lands for future generations and ultimately for the survival of the entire planet. The elders said it touched their hearts and made them glad to see so many people take time out of their busy lives to show their concern and care for them. They said, "Our spirit is strengthened and we are determined to stay here on our land." They want people to educate themselves about indigenous people and their struggles. They want the world to hear their voices calling out from between the 4 sacred mountains. They hope the increasing number of supporters continue their good work at Big Mountain and the former joint use area. They are grateful for the strong, ongoing response to the call to consciousness.
You filming us?
I believe, what my elders always say is that to hang on to the land no matter what, no matter how hard it is or whatever difficulties it will drag us through, but as long as we have it for our future generations. And I know that for myself, I'll always be there, if not physically, spiritually, I will always be there because that's my home, that's where my umbilical cord was, buried, and a part of me is there, and I can, I probably will never leave that place. I may go and do things, but I'll always come back to that place, and Big Mountain is always my home. And for my grandchildren and the future generations, I just pray and hope and believe that there will be a place for them there, to continue with their survival if the world doesn't explode.
It is imperative that the human race immediately take action to save its native biosphere. It is the responsibility of each individual to ensure the survival of the planet and consequently the survival of all mankind.
This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is your